everybody, and welcome to a deep dive of the Washington Commanders brought to you by Planet Football Pod. My name is Riley. I will be going over the Commanders today and their situation. We'll go over their results from last year, their expectations that they had for that year, and whether they met them or exceeded them or, was disappointing. And we'll go over what they can do to improve, what they did to improve, and whatever else they can do to bounce back into next year. Commanders had a very disappointing year in 2025. They finished with a 5 and 12 record. That was very underwhelming considering they had made the NFC Championship just before last year, where they lost to the Eagles. It just was disappointing. I mean, you were coming off of a Jaden Daniels really good rookie season. He looked to be the next big thing. They won so many games, and he brought them so much playoff success. And I know it fizzled out to the Eagles, but the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl, so it doesn't hurt that bad. And on top of that, it's just you have high expectations. You think in the sophomore year, it's all going to get better. You can only go up from there, and that's it. But it fizzled out to 5 and 12, missing the playoffs, ton of injuries, and the need for a big bounce back next year. Now, obviously, the biggest reason they fizzled out this year was due to Jaden Daniels suffering multiple injuries. He had that knee sprain, he had that elbow issue, then eventually he had the hamstring issue, which is kind of at the end they decided to sideline him for the rest of the year, which was not a bad choice. He's your star quarterback, the future of your franchise, so you always want to treat him very precautiously, especially in a year that you already know kind of was down the drain. You also had other injuries to some offensive linemen and some poor play and injuries to Terry McLaurin. So it was just a combination of things. It didn't help that there was a lack of run game and a lack of defensive effort on the other end that resulted in, I mean, what the heck happened to Marshawn Lattimore? It's like he gave up. He just couldn't play. He was just straight burnt toast in the outfield. He was a major liability, so it resulted in them moving on from him last offseason. In the offseason before, you brought in Debo, who was a good addition if he could play like his old self a little bit and maybe drop some of the weight. Then you also traded a couple picks and stuff for Laramie Tunsil to help shore up the O-line. Now, obviously, they were supposed to come in and help you improve and maybe even take you past the championship round, and that didn't happen. But that, again, extenuating circumstances with injury to Jaden, injury to some O-linemen, defense just not playing as it is. But now going into next year, you kind of have a different feel and different look, switch some things around, got a new offensive coordinator, hopefully sidelining Jaden Daniels makes him healthy for next year and everything else like that. On the defensive side of the ball, they ranked pretty low defensively, with their average rankings being around the 20 to 30 area. Now, considering the year before when they had a pretty okay defense, I wouldn't say they had a stellar defense, they had a pretty okay defense. It just devolved from there, didn't do too well, gave up a lot of points, and then, of course, with your offense being run by Marcus Mariota, you're not expecting many points on the other end. It was just that type of year. There really are no key games to kind of go over, other than, Jaden Daniels got that knee injury with a sprained knee, and then he had the hamstring, and then dislocated elbow, and then shut down the season. They had their worst start at 3-10 since 2019. They hadn't had that bad of a start for a while, and then the injuries to Terry McLaurin and Sam Cosmi just kind of were the cherry on top to why they only resulted in that really bad start. McLaurin did return later on in the year, but he just didn't play like the scary Terry they knew. He's kind of getting up there a little bit in age. He's still pretty good, but he needs to have a good bounce back year next year and improve from that. Now, the question is, can they bounce back? I believe yes, that they had a good offseason and a good enough draft to improve on their 5 and 12 record from last year. It won't be that hard because, to me, as long as Jaden Daniels is healthy, they'll improve on that record no matter what. They added Odafe Owuwe to a 4-year, $100 million deal. That was a pretty good pickup. He's a solid defensive end that a lot of teams were vying for. I know Dallas was vying for him. Chargers wanted to re-sign him. Good young talent that if he can develop into what they need him to be, he could be a force off the end. Then they add Robertson, Tim Settle, Leo Chanel, Clevion Chasson. Clevion Chasson and Leo Chanel add good linebacker depth to them. They needed something out of Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner's aging. They kind of needed to move on from Wagner because he's not him anymore. I mean, he still gets good tackles, but you can tell the age is catching up to him. They added Nick Cross, a nice safety, Charles Awamu, defensive end, Rashad White, some running back depth, Jerome Ford, some running back depth, some wide receiver depth with Van Jefferson and De'Ami Brown. And then, of course, I think one of their better pickups and underrated pickups was Chig Okonkwo. Okonkwo is an underrated tight end. He came from Tennessee, so I believe he should be good and hopefully pan out for them. It didn't look like a bad pickup to me. And then on top of that, I say they had a fairly good draft. Big thing to me, Sonny Styles. He was a great pick. He's exactly what they needed to fix their defense and everything like that. Solid, athletic linebacker out of Ohio State. Everybody on our podcast, including me, is high on him and believe he will pan out to be a good linebacker. So you pair him with those couple of signings and everything looks pretty good. Then you also get Antonio Williams in the third round. I think that's a very underrated wide receiver pickup. I'm not just saying that being a biased Clemson fan. I think he's just a good receiver that you could pick up in the middle of the rounds and be a nice little addition to Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin. And now you have Okonkwo, so nice tight end. You still have everybody else pretty much because I don't believe they lost too many people in the offseason. They got a nice defensive end, Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee. They didn't have many other picks because of the Larry Tunsil trade, but they also got Katron Allen, Matt Golbin, and Ethan Kalamakis. Just a couple of depth pieces, late round picks to shore up some positions. To me, I think their biggest need is to shore up that run game. I think they decided to go running back by committee. They ended up, because next year they'll have Crosby Merritt, Rashad White, Jerome Ford, pending any cuts or anything else like that. Just a bunch of solid production guys. I wouldn't say like insanely good, but guys who can get you like 3-4 yards of carry and you can cycle them in and out and keep them all fresh and clean for the next drive. The thing that can kind of make or break even next year is they lost Cliff Kingsbury at offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury was a very solid offensive coordinator for them. Obviously, he didn't work out as a head coach, but he's great at calling plays, and he was there with them when they went to the NFC Championship. Now, I say they took a gamble at offensive coordinator. And the reason I say that is because they went with their quarterbacks coach, David Blau. David Blau, he was a quarterback not too long ago, actually. I think he retired in like 23. He became quarterback coach for them maybe that same year because I think he was 3 years out from coaching. And he's just not that big of an experienced guy. Now, not saying it won't work. I'm just saying this is a big gamble. It's putting all your eggs into a basket thinking maybe he's a genius and can lead this team back to the promised land and doing everything else like that. They also lost Eric Bieniemy. He returned to Kansas City. He was their run game coordinator. Now he went over to Kansas City to become the offense coordinator again and everything else like that. But it's just a big gamble at offense coordinator. It's going to be a wait and see type of hire, and whether he'll work out or he'll be a bust or he could be like a gym, it's just a lot of it's wait and see because you still have Dan Quinn. Of course, you returned Jaden Daniels. You made some good signings, some good improvements to the draft. So obviously you did good there. Now it's just whether you can survive the new offense coordinator and the new schedule. Now the new schedule is where it gets tricky. You have teams like Philly and Dallas, obviously, because you're in their division, so you have to play them twice. But you also have Seattle, Indianapolis, San Fran, the Rams, the Bengals, the Texans, the Falcons, Jacksonville, and Minnesota. It's not an easy schedule. And I say that goes for the entirety of the NFC East. I think they all pretty much got a very, very rough schedule. That includes Dallas and Philly and New York. Because, I mean, you're matching and playing the NFC West, which is just a really good division with the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, reigning champions. And to us, the Seahawks and the Rams are going to be the two teams to really kind of beat next year. And then, of course, you already have to play Dallas twice if Dallas improves. You already have to play Philly twice, the reigning champs for the last 2 years for the division. And then you add Houston, and Atlanta can be scrappy. Minnesota's defense is good. Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. The Bengals with Burrow. Then you also have the Colts and stuff like that. It's just it's a rough schedule. It's not an easy schedule by any means. It's gonna be make or break, I think, especially for all of the NFC East. I think they have, well, all schedules of kind of like death on their timetable. But that's, if you come out on top of a schedule like this, then you look better in the playoffs. I mean, the rougher the schedule, the stronger your team comes out in the end, and the better chance you have to go and win it all. Not saying that the Commanders will win it all, but if they come out of this type of schedule like 12-5, then obviously a lot of teams will be favoring them to contend against the Rams and the Seahawks and stuff like that. Everything into next year, you kind of want to try to predict what their record could be. You have the schedules, you have bounce back from injuries, the new signings, the rookies, and everything else like that. Considering all factors, I believe they can go a solid 10-7. They can improve from last year, where they just had a very bad down year due to injuries, and I believe they can fight for a wild card spot. Now, I don't think this is a team, unless they come out firing, that will take you to the championship game again or the Super Bowl or win it all. But I believe this is a solid team. I believe they can earn a playoff spot, especially if they come out on the back end of that schedule. I think they have a floor of probably 6-11, a ceiling of probably 11-6 and 12-5, and then middle out at around 10-7. To me, it really just depends on how Jaden Daniels comes out and responds after his injury, and if he's the same Jaden Daniels as before, or if he's going to turn into Glass Bones McGee or anything else like that. That's just the biggest issue. They also just have to prove they can establish the run. Now, they have, like I said, three solid running backs, but that doesn't mean anything if you can't establish the run. You need Cosney to be healthy. You need McLaurin to play like his old self. You better hope the play calling holds true with David Blau as your new play caller. These are all factors you have to consider when going into next year. Now, I don't believe they'll be as bad as 5-12, but they're just not going to be the contender they were a couple years ago, unless, say, Jaden Daniels is back and he's him. Maybe Debo Samuel gets his fuel factor back, and McLaurin gets his fuel factor back, and the defense can be top 20. Doesn't have to be stellar, but at least good enough to make stops sometimes when they need them to make stops. It just all depends. Obviously, we're in the off season. It's all speculation. You're trying to predict everything and say how it goes, and you can't say everybody's going to win everything, or anybody's going to just make the playoffs. You have to make educated decisions, because you still have the Eagles in your division. You still have Dallas in your division. Who knows if the Giants under Harbaugh could be much better? Who knows if none of them are good, and maybe you're the only good team in the division, or it's like 2020 where no team makes it out above 500. It's just it's unpredictable and predictable at the same time. Like, you can take all the factors and make predictions for yourself, and see if you're right or wrong and get called out for it for bad takes, or you can just throw everything at the wall and say what you got. That's what we pretty much do with a lot of these videos. And yeah, I believe they improve. I believe they go maybe 10-7. I could even see like a 9-8. I don't believe they'll contend for anything, but who knows? It's a long year. They could turn out to be what everybody wants them to be. Jaden Daniels could bring all the magic back from a couple years ago, or it could be another injury season and you learn maybe Jaden Daniels just is injury prone and you can't escape that. It all depends. To me, their whole season depends on him being healthy and him playing like the man before. It's, tied and true, but if your franchise quarterback plays like your franchise quarterback, then you are set and there is nothing else you can ask for. You just need the team to play up and around him and help him out on every end. Now, with that being said, that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one.